All right, everybody. Welcome back. Another beautiful Tuesday. And today we're talking about closing time. I'm very excited because I have two of the best closers maybe in the world in front of me right here. Matt and Bill, how are you guys doing today?
Hey, good morning, Evan. How are you? That's mighty big praise. We're like Mariano Rivera over here. I have Matt, and we're closing. So
I don't know about that. I lasted through T-ball.
I was a really good closer with coach pitch. Unfortunately, I was pitching to my own kids. I was supposed to try to let them hit the ball. But,
Okay.
yeah, that was my last attempt. But welcome back. Happy Tuesday. Before we get started, a general reminder that this show works best whenever you guys submit questions to us. And whenever you submit questions, we're able to get to them and answer them live on the show and do it in a timely way. The way you can submit questions to us is by submitting them to evan@telericogroup.com, Evan, E-V-A-N, @telericogroup.com. So please share those questions with us, and we'll be sure to answer them on future shows and throughout the week.
Yep, and today's show is about closing, which is a question we get a lot, and actually a springboard off of one recently. How do we increase our closing percentage? So we're going to dig into that today.
Yep. So it's funny, when we think of closing, everybody has the stereotypical view of what a closer has to be. And it's, hard, what do you call it, strong-arming people and forcing them into doing things they might not want to do. At times, they're not yet ready to do them. And that's not what we believe closing is meant to be, right? That's stereotypical, that's bad, that's putting your needs ahead of the other. Manipulative, absolutely. As we always say, our quota is not their problem. Yes, sir, Evan.
Just talking about manipulation, I have a great story. Not that I want to extend the life of the show, but this happened to me yesterday, and I feel like I have to share it with you guys. Sitting at home, baby's crying. That's an important detail. It'll come up later. Someone knocks on my door, and I go outside, and it's a guy from a company called, well, I won't name the company, but really nice young kid. Starts chatting me up, and the way I am, someone's nice, I reciprocate, and I'm like, yeah, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And he said, do you know John down the street? And I'm like, no, but whatever. And he goes, well, we do, we kill all the bugs around your house and do, it was like a Terminix type deal. And he's like, so, if you want to do it, it's this, and this. I'll give you a new deal since you just moved into the neighborhood. And it was like, I could tell it was starting to turn into right on the spot. He wanted an answer from me. He wanted to close right then and there. And so I pulled out my trump card, which was, well, let me ask my wife because she says no to anything that I want to buy. and I knew the baby was crying. So I was like, well, I got to go ask my wife. And so I go inside and I ask her and she comes out and she's like, no, we don't need that. We don't need that. So he went away. I felt kind of bad, but it felt like manipulation a little bit because he asked if I knew John down the street. And I don't think that he even knew a John down the street. Right. So it's just a funny little story there.
Yeah. And it's putting his quota and his needs ahead of you.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, with the what's that called? What you were just talking about, the exterminator.
Mm-hmm.
When they came to our house, he was like, "What package would you like?" I said, "I want the my wife and daughters never see anything package." Oh, how much is that one? I want them to see nothing ever. So
if door-to-door salespeople are listening, make sure you go to Bill's house because he buys everything.
Or come to my house when my wife's not home and I'll
you have budget. Yeah, so it's that manipulation, though, that gives people bad taste, right? That manipulation of, do you know John? And, all the fake niceties. And you can see through that when people are inauthentic. We find the best closers aren't those folks. The best closers are the people that work hard early in the process and do a great job qualifying, do a great job in discovery. And then closing, we just get to a natural end.
Mm-hmm.
Closing isn't that thing that happens at the end. Closing is that managing of the process throughout. So then when we get to the end, when we get to that point where we've identified a challenge, we've told them what the solution looks like, we've been able to build it into a budget, we just say, okay, so what makes sense from here?
Yeah. I really think if you want to close more work, look at your questions.
Mm-hmm.
And
up front, you mean early in the process?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Especially, a lot of people think that closing happens at the end. It's the last stage in the process. Answered everything, closed, manipulate, strong arm. But from my perspective, the whole Glengarry Glen Ross ABC always be closing,
Right.
not in his sense,
Right.
but twisting that a little bit. You're always basically closing with the questions that you ask, and you're trying to walk through the process.
It starts, yeah, and that even starts in the very first meeting. Closing starts at the very beginning, where we define what happens when we start defining what the process is going to look like. Hey, if this made sense. Hey, if we're able to help you identify this challenge. Hey, or satisfy this challenge, what would happen? What's the process look like? We start working through that.
Yep.
Versus getting to the end and saying, I don't know, Matt, I think you need to make a decision today because, if not, we only have one left. And, when you're doing those things, you don't build customers for life.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
just don't.
Well, you beat me to it because I jotted down 5 things because this is a really popular topic, and I think it pulls together, a lot of the Tallarico-isms that we use, and you hit the nail on the head. To close more business, it's never, number one, it's never too early to talk about the process. Mm-hmm. Even if you're in 3 meetings, 4 meetings, or you're going to do a proposal draft review. We know what happens next. We know the process, and guess what? It makes us look like we've been there before. Mm-hmm. Right. And it exudes confidence. So, knowing that we're going to propose, knowing that we might need to have a scope meeting, knowing that we might need to bring other people in, that's a great way to not only create a little bit of that urgency, that Evan felt in the wrong way, but from the first meeting when you're starting to put those posts in the ground because what happens and the timelines that in your experience in like deals that have happened, maybe they need to be tweaked based on the prospect's needs, but now you're starting to build that process and it's never too early to start talking about that. Right.
And I think that it's never too often to talk about it because
Correct.
when you go through multiple meetings and you revisit the process and say, hey, is Sally still bought in? Is Larry still bought in? Have you talked to Sally? And when you go through reminding people about the process, revisiting the process, it reinforces the process for them because remember, they're not buying things every day. They're not buying what we sell every day. Mm-hmm. So when we take them back through a reminder of the process, they're learning, they're sharing, we're becoming more partnered with them versus adversarial closing.
Yeah. Well, it's not only reinforcing, but how often do things change? Mm-hmm. How often do we know in a meeting that I always use VP Vince? They have to go talk to VP Vince or pull VP Vince into the conversation. Mm-hmm. We go back and they're like, things changed. Timelines changed, money's changed, budget's changed. VP Vince has a friend that he wants to put into the process. And so for me, number 2, to close more deals, it's to live in discovery from hello to thank you because it's not a rigid process anymore.
That's right. It's very fluid, especially with COVID.
Yeah.
I think that it was becoming more fluid, but with COVID now everything's up in the air. We see things moving on the calendar. We see things changing. There's no such thing as firm or permanence, right? Everything is fluid every day.
Yeah, and we talk about it all the time about the questions, us getting information, but walking through the process, our process, and then fitting it in as well to their internal buying process. Right. Helps them realize what happens next. I always hear you on the phone when you're buying something or somebody's calling you and just like, tell me what to do. Right? Yeah. I want this. Tell me what happens next. Tell me how to buy this. And so I think
part of that's learning, by the way. I love to test salespeople. Okay. No, that's true though. I love to test salespeople and see what they think. But it's also because, like Matt says, I'm not buying these things every day.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I always ask somebody, if this were you, if this were your kid, if this were your parent, what would you do? Mm-hmm. Because I think that gives us some clarity. But it's that discovery. Staying in discovery, constantly qualifying, constantly flushing out the process that leads to clarity.
Yep, absolutely. Another thing I have is, being a proactive listener and questioner versus reactive. Mm-hmm. Obviously, coaching is a big part of what we do. And oftentimes we get people that said, yeah, they asked me this question and thinking back, that I should have probably asked another question, or now that the deal has stalled out, that person that they mentioned was probably important in the decision-making process. So whenever someone new enters the equation. I'm going to have to talk to Steve, or I'm going to have to talk to Sally. You got to stay there and be proactive and figure out, who's Steve, who's Sally, what's important to them, what questions are they going to have.
What's the easiest way to do that? If somebody says, "Oh, I have to talk to Sally," what's the best way to figure that out?
In regards to the process?
Yeah, just it's about Sally.
Tell me about Sally.
That's right. Tell me about Sally.
I thought that was a trick question.
No,
for a second. You were looking at me like you wanted like this huge answer.
No. Tell me about Sally. Yeah, what's important to Sally? Last time Sally got involved in the process, what did she look for? What was important to her?
What questions is Sally going to have? Now that you've seen the proposal, and I think too, not getting off topic, but much like closing, asking for the meeting is another big thing that we get all the time. Yeah. So someone says, "Hey, I got to meet with Sally. Can I meet with Sally?" Yeah. Right? Let me hurdle over you and let me meet with Sally. Whereas if we ask some of those questions, tell me about Sally. What's important to Sally? What questions is Sally going to have?
How can I help you answer Sally's questions? When Sally asks you those questions, what are you going to share?
Yeah.
How can I help you?
It sounds like it makes sense, especially if they don't have answers and they might be getting a little uncomfortable. Sounds like it makes sense that all three of us get together.
Yeah.
So if you burden a little bit, your chances to get that meeting go up. But be proactive versus reactive. Mm-hmm. We want to slow down to ultimately speed it up. So when someone is introduced, when there's a portion of the process or there's something new or something has changed, don't just breeze over it, even if it's good, right? Even if it feels like they're expediting the process or they have better news than we thought. We need to slow down and say, what's changed?
Happy years.
Yeah.
Don't have happy years, right? Stay in the moment and learn what's happening. Have clarity so that when you come back, you know as much about the process, if not more, than they do.
Yeah. Number 4 for me, and I feel like we should be asking one of these every single interaction, if not multiple. One of the best ways, I don't want to say to close, right, because we're closing the whole process, but one of those best ways at the end perhaps is one thing questions.
Oh, yeah. I love one thing questions, right?
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And, one thing questions are so much more powerful than anything questions. Anything questions sound like, is there any reason you wouldn't work with us? Who's going to say no to that?
Price.
Right. Yeah, but usually
but that's
people
what they
just
say.
are like, no, we're good. Or,
Yeah.
Or, your price, if your price is too high. Okay, well, what do I do with that? When I say, is there any reason you wouldn't work with us? And they say price. Okay.
Is there any other reason that I could answer?
Or let me just go back and start discounting and negotiate against myself before you say anything. Well, versus what's the one thing? And if I say, well, hey, Matt, what's the one reason you wouldn't work with us? If we came back next week, things make sense. What would be the one reason you'd say no? And you say, well, price. Okay, well, tell me more about that. Or just say price, and people are going to share more. They're going to say, well, yeah, we need to be below this number, dude. You get the information, and we can have a conversation about that. Mm-hmm. Versus just saying, hey, is there any reason you wouldn't work with us? Or is there any reason that you don't think we can do this, move forward together? Yeah. People are like, no.
Is there anything I can do to speed it up or help your process?
Yeah, no.
When is the last time someone's answered that?
You don't give them permission to tell the truth. One thing questions give people permission to tell the truth. They give people a reason to share with us. When we talk about one thing questions, the thing we hear most is, what if there's more than one? Yeah, right? Well, guess what? They share more than one.
Yeah.
One thing questions just get the ball moving. One thing questions are the permission to tell the truth. If there's 2, 3, 4, 5 reasons, well, we might have bigger issues than we thought, but people will share those with us.
Yeah, and I think for the people that we coach, we see the maturation process, especially in one thing questions, because in theory they make sense. I think if it's an okay deal, okay interaction, we're bold enough to throw it out. But one thing questions are extremely important all the time, but especially when things are going good.
Yeah.
Even if we have that verbal, right? It's real easy to say, okay, great. Can't wait to work with you. But how do we slow down a verbal a little bit when they say, Bill, we want to go with you? What's that sound like?
Great. We appreciate your confidence. Quick question. If we weren't to get the contract back next week or we weren't to get the agreement back next week, as you said, what would be the one reason why?
And guess what? A lot of times something comes out.
Yeah. They'll say, well, I still have to get this approved by finance.
Oh, who's
that's
fu-
interesting. Right? Yeah, or I still have to get this. Oh, okay. So, in their mind, they're ready to go. But we still have to flush out all the things that could happen that could turn it sideways for us and understand what we need to do. So, all right. And a quick question came in. What's that question, Evan?
The question from somebody watching on YouTube is this video channel all about sales?
I guess it is, isn't it? We're virtually all about sales. Every once in a while we throw leadership topics in that we think are very closely related to sales. But yeah, we try to tackle sales challenges and sales problems. And thank you, SJL, for the question.
Yep.
So Matt, what's your your last little tip on closing?
Last one, something that we've all talked about and heard, but clear next steps. Clear next steps. You have to have them to maintain that urgency. You have to have them even with that verbal. Clear next steps to me is sort of that close. It's the closest thing to that close, right, in some of the more manipulative fashions that we've talked about. Right. I think it's the closest resemblance to that, even though it's the most respectful thing we can do. It's the most natural thing we can do. It's how we keep momentum. It's how we keep urgency.
Absolutely. It's the greatest momentum builder we have. When we build clear next steps, it's mini closes, right? Clear next steps. Remember, clear next steps are different than next steps, as clear next steps are specific and time-bound and appear on two people's calendars. And when we set those, when we're constantly moving towards what we do next, who owes who what, right? It's amazing the momentum we build and how we start to build inside of the other party, inside of the prospect or the client, that mindset of we're working together, we're moving forward, right? It's kind of great. And it's great in the sense that it gives us that relationship building that, everybody's like, oh, I'm great at building relationships. Okay, well, this is clear next steps help us build real business relationship as we move forward, not just buying donuts and dropping them off, right?
Right.
Nothing wrong with that if you're doing it, especially if you want to drop some off here. We'll take them. But clear next steps, maintain that momentum. They get us moving forward. They give both people something to do. And a clear next step, an example of a clear next step is, hey, Matt, what makes sense from here? You would say, I don't know, I need a couple weeks to think it over. I would look at my calendar and I'd say, today's the 27th. A couple weeks puts us around August 15th. What looks good for you that week to catch up?
Yep. So just quickly a recap, an alternative to arm wrestling someone at the end of a deal.
And by the way, then I'd send a calendar invite.
Oh, very good.
When you gave me a date, the week of the 15th, I would send a calendar invite and say that'll be a good touch base for us.
Absolutely. So to close more deals, never too early to discuss the process, right? We know what happens next. Act like you've been there before and start putting those posts on the ground, whether it's walkthroughs, dates you need the contract back. It's really hard at the end of the deal. And
demos.
And it feels manipulative when they didn't know you need the contract back a month before the start date. Right. And it's 2 weeks before the start date and you're trying to hit your number and you're saying, hey, can we get that?
That's right.
Can we sign it? Whereas if 3 months ago you said, I needed a month before, 2 weeks before that month, when we're 6 weeks out, we're saying, hey, just a reminder, let's, keep moving forward. We have time on our side now, but what's the one thing that could trip us up? Can you make that deadline?
That's right. What would get in the way? What would be the one thing that would get in the way of us hitting that date?
Yep.
And I think to add one thing to Matt's list of tips, I don't know what you had 4, let's make this 5, is embracing sales as project management, right? Because when we look at the end with the end in mind, and we say, hey, ideally you want to get started on January 1st. That means to get started on January 1st, we need the contract back December 1st. That means we need to do these things in place. We should probably get going like now.
Yep.
Right. And that starts that urgency, which is real. It helps us create that clear path, the roadmap, the plan, and it enables us to start working with them towards that natural close, so that we're not sitting there on December 20th saying, "Hey, can we get this done by the end of the year?"
Yeah. Well, and I know this was supposed to be a recap, and now I just have more thoughts. But I hear all the time salespeople talk about, ops might not be able to deliver it. Ops, they can't get it out. It's our biggest client. Ops this, ops that. Whereas, a lot of times as salespeople, we have to look in the mirror. And did we set expectations? Did we project manage that sales cycle, and did we alert the client that we need that a month early? We need that 6 weeks early. So I think that's just a reminder for salespeople that it's not all necessarily ops. We all know that struggle sometimes, but did we clearly manage expectations, or did we do it at the 11th hour, which will now start feeling manipulative?
Look in the mirror, right?
Yeah.
So, good. Want to hit a quick recap, and then we'll move on and give you a little teaser for next week and let you guys get to go selling something.
I have one more question for you.
Uh-oh.
We'll skip the recap. Do you ask for the work? That's a question I get all the time. They didn't ask for the work, or the salesperson, you have to ask for the work.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
Well, I think I don't know if we have to ask for the work or make it clear that we want to work. I don't think we need to ask for it if we do a great job, again, moving forward with what's our plan. So if we're open, we're honest, and we come into a conversation letting people know what we want to do, what a good outcome looks like, asking them what success looks like with our interaction, I think that that's a way of asking for work. But why don't we punt that one down the road a little bit? And Evan, you want to remind us that we want to take that on as a topic in the weeks ahead about asking for the work. For all those who are joining, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. We're gonna talk next week a little bit about some sales management principles, and we'll come back and talk about asking for the work as well in the show ahead and how we do that.
Yeah, just really quick, a couple more comments here from SJL, who's watching over on YouTube. Says, I've been looking for a channel like this, and you're the first. You're definitely filling a need. By the way, there are a ton of sales vids on YouTube, but I mean, I've been looking for live, real, practical sales talk. And they also asked, what do you guys sell? So maybe just give our fan here a quick rundown of what we do and when they can catch the show again.
Sure. So we do this show every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Matt and I are partners here at the Tellerico Group. We help companies grow. We usually do that by engaging with their sales organization, developing sales process, and developing salespeople. We also develop leaders and build cohesive teams, and we help people acquire great talent by recruiting salespeople and executives. So thanks for joining us. For everybody who's here all the time, thank you guys so much. It's good to have you back. Appreciate you. I hope you're having a safe summer. And take care. We'll see you next week, and God bless.